Hi everybody, this is Anne. Traditionally, the term mandala has referred to a geometric design or pattern that represents the cosmos and finding peace in the symmetry of the universe. Over time, the term mandala has been used in art to describe a geometric set of patterns, colors, and shapes which radiate out from the center point. In this video, I'll show you 3 ways to create mandalas on your bowls and plates. How many of you remember making easy folded and cut paper snowflakes in school around the holidays? Starting with a piece of printer paper, I traced around a paper plate and cut out a circle. I folded it in half, then folded it again and again until I had a pie-shaped piece. I used scissors to make simple cuts on each side of the pie shape, being careful not to cut all the way through. When I opened up the paper, I had this unique snowflake or mandala. Let's see if we can transfer that to the clay. I started by rolling out a 1/4-inch slab and ribbing it on both sides with my rubber rib. I started to flatten the paper down from the center with my fingers so it would stick to the clay with as few wrinkles as possible. I then rolled the paper onto the surface with a rolling pin, again placing the pin over the center mark. Chances are that you can see the design when you peel up the paper, but to make sure I don't lose sight of the pattern, I'm using a bamboo skewer to lightly trace around each cutout. I used an X-Acto knife to cut around the outer edge of the template. I removed the excess clay, then gently pulled the paper template away to reveal this lovely design. To make this into a rounded bowl shape, I placed it on a piece of plastic wrap and into a styrofoam half sphere. Now here's one I made earlier. I draped it into the sphere and let it dry to leather hard. I could leave the design as I originally cut it, but I decided to go a step further and connect the shapes and give it more detail. Using a pencil, I began linking the shapes together using simple lines to create a unified pattern. A tip is to leave the bowl in the styrofoam mold until it's bone dry to prevent cracking along the rim. Using my diamond core fine line carving tool, I began to carve along each line. For even more interest, I decided to add areas with even more detail. Now here's one I made earlier where I continued to connect lines and add detail, so I had this beautiful composition. I added a foot and some clay pieces to the rim of the bowl, along with more carving on the outside of the bowl. Another way to transfer the design to the clay is by stenciling. Again, starting with the paper snowflake, I wanted to transfer it to a sheet of craft foam. I gently taped the template flat to the foam sheet. I traced around each cutout with a pencil, but you can use a pen too. I want to cut along those trace lines, so I laid down a quilt rotary cutting mat. I placed my foam sheet down on top of it, then just cut each line with an X-Acto knife. Again, I rolled out a 1/4-inch slab and placed the foam sheet on top. Working from the center out, I used my rolling pin to work the foam into the clay surface. Now I'll use black underglaze to fill in the cutout areas. I used a paintbrush to work the underglaze from the stencil into each cutout to avoid any bleeding under the edges. I made sure I got good coverage over the clay, or you can do this in layers too. Of course, you can always touch up any thin spots later if you see some of the clay showing through. I used a hairdryer to dry the underglaze. As it dries on the template, it'll start to turn gray, so I know I can safely peel it off without smearing wet underglaze. Again, I wanted to connect some of these cutouts for a more unified design. I filled a cake decorating bottle with underglaze and piped it out both in the form of lines and dots. Finally, I piped a nice border along the outer edge. I cut this out with an X-Acto knife. When the underglaze was dry enough, I placed this on a piece of plastic wrap and draped it into a half sphere. Here's one I made earlier, where it's dried to leather hard. It looks nice as it is, but you can also take it one step further by doing a little sgraffito carving in all the black underglazed areas. I just love that. It can be a little platter or even a trivet to place your casserole on a festive holiday table. One more way to transfer these designs on your clay is to create a stamp. I started with this piece of linoleum that I purchased at my local craft store. The linoleum is pliable like a stamp and easy to carve into. I placed the template down on the linoleum and traced around each of the cutouts and around the border. I used a sharp V-shaped blade in a linoleum cutter to make the cuts. It takes a little practice, but I gently skimmed off the outer surface of the linoleum along each line. I wasn't worried about getting the cuts exactly straight or the same width. In the end, you'll still have a nice radiating mandala pattern. Here's one I made earlier, where you can see again that I connected the shapes and accentuated them with simple line details for this elaborate appearance. To use it, again I rolled out a 1/4-inch slab and placed the cut side down on the clay. Always working from the center, I began rolling the stamp into the clay to make an impression. When I peeled up the linoleum, I had this cool pattern. Again, I draped it into the styrofoam mold and left it until it was bone dry for this lovely bowl. The great thing about this type of transfer is that you can make multiples of these bowls once you have linoleum cut. Let me know your thoughts about these projects in the comments section below. Thanks to the newest members of our Little Street Pottery Research Facility team. If you'd like to join the team and earn a title, click on the Super Thanks button or the link to buy me a coffee. It also really helps us out if you hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. See you next time in the studio. Hi, everybody.